Welcome to the Old Pueblo New Economy podcast, which covers a wide range of stories and the innovators that help shape our regional economies. From the rising stars with Nick Morin to the creative community with Julie Bonner, to Mentor Me Live and regional investor deep dives with Aaron Eden. We are one platform, showcasing the diverse voices of our local community. We are the Old Pueblo New Economy. I'm your host, Julie Bonner, for this creative community episode. Listen to conversations with inspiring creative entrepreneurs right here in Tucson. I'm also a local artist, designer, and marketing director, and here to learn along with you. My goal is that you can apply some of these lessons learned into your own best practices. Let's turn up the creativity, Tucson.
Community Investment Corps, located in Tucson and serving Southern Arizona, empowers small business owners with knowledge and access to capital. CIC believes in economic inclusion and supports entrepreneurs and small business owners at all stages with the practical resources and education they need to thrive and turn dreams to reality. CIC is a proud founding sponsor of this podcast.
Learn how Ashley White pivoted from a master's in higher education to becoming one of Tucson's well-known illustrators and commercial artists for many of the restaurants you love, like 1055 and La Buzz. Ashley continuously loves to learn and discusses some of the challenges and resources for a career as a fine artist. She's a go-getter who knows how to reach out to potential clients and also can describe who her ideal client is. Let's get inside Ashley's creative mind.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Old Pueblo New Economy. I'm Julie Bonner, and I'm here interviewing Ashley White of Modern Aquarian. She's an amazing artist, typographer, hand letterer, designer, all of the above, and so I'm excited we get to talk to her today. So how are you doing?
I'm doing really great, actually.
I love seeing your studio.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And so we're going to kick things off actually asking you about your background. How did you get involved with, art and the kind of the business of art?
Yeah, so I've always drawn, I've always been artistic ever since I was a little kid. That's kind of what people, knew me to do, is just draw all day long. And I even would I would draw all my boyfriend's names and all these different fonts, not because I was obsessed with my boyfriends, but because I just, I loved lettering and just playing around with typography and stuff like that. But actually, I didn't go into the art field at first. I have a master's degree in higher education. So I was kind of going down the path of working with students, in an advisory role, in student services, like student leadership, honor students, like cultural centers, stuff like that. And so I got my master's in that field. That's actually what brought me out to Tucson, is because I went to the U of A for graduate school. And I actually wasn't planning on staying in Tucson after my master's. But while I was here for my master's, I just kind of fell in love with the city. And so about a year into working full time, I realized that it was not a field for me.
The teaching part you were doing,
Yeah, actually, I wasn't doing teaching. It was more like one-on-one with students, helping them get acclimated to college and helping them find classes and clubs and internships that kind of match their interests and what kind of field they wanted to go into. And I loved that part of it. I loved the student relationship part, but it wasn't a good fit for me to work within a large bureaucratic organization like that, honestly. And so I was actually looking to go into nonprofit work. So I figured, if I'm going to work for a large bureaucracy, I might as well have a little bit more directly helping people. But no, it was while I was looking for kind of a different direction, I saw an ad from a restaurant that needed a chalkboard menu hand lettered, a specials menu done. And so I thought that just sounded fun. So I went over there every day after work for 2 weeks and did it. And I just fell in love with it and thought, okay, well, I'm not sure how this is going to work out. I'll just get a job at a coffee shop and I'll just kind of do this on the side until I figure out what direction I'm going to go into. But actually, pretty much from the day I started reaching out to restaurants, I've been booked ever since. And that was 6.5 years ago now.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
And I love, so if you guys haven't seen her chalkboard art, I mean, all over Tucson, can you name a few places? I know Roadhouse Cinemas, you've helped them out in the past with their art. Who else?
Yeah, so actually that's kind of how I started, was with the chalkboard look and using like the paint markers and stuff. So Savaya was one of my earliest clients. I did all of their locations, Roadhouse Cinemas for sure. Gosh, it's hard to
Oh, and now
it's hard to think off the top of my head, but
yeah, well, you've done a lot, and then it's morphed into either more projects. So once you started doing the chalkboard art, were you working then at a coffee shop too, or how did you kind of do two jobs at once, or?
Well, I never had to get a job at a coffee shop. I actually just started reaching out to new restaurants that I knew were going to open and asked them if they needed any signs or artwork done. And I also did like wedding signs and private commissions, like people who just wanted like a sign for their daughter's room or something like that. So in the beginning, I was doing a lot of different things, but mostly with like paint markers. And then the more and more I did research on materials and design and all that, the more and more I fell into like traditional sign painting methods. So I started learning more about how to paint and what brushes to use. I mean, I had already painted like, scenery and other stuff just on my own, but painting signs and lettering is this whole other field of painting that requires like different paint and different technique and stuff like that. So I just learned more and more about that aspect of signage, and started doing less and less of like the paint markers and chalkboard type stuff, and more professional sign painting, like painting someone's logo on their facade, or interior signage, stuff like that.
For example, you did is it Arizona Wine Collective? Yeah, which is so fun. And if you go into their space, you see what Ashley did on the wall, and it adds character, and now the new La Buzz, I know you helped out with that. And so over time, so it's been, was it 6.5 years?
6.5 years.
That's awesome. And go ahead.
So now, so it's really evolved. And the clients that I have really grown with me and allowed me to kind of grow in my craft. So it's really changed from the chalkboard lettering to sign painting to now I'm doing actually more of like all encompassing. I mean, I'm just calling myself a commercial artist at this point, because it's not just, part of my job is, yes, if they have a logo that needs to be put on the building, I'll paint that, but it's more than that. So like La Buzz is a great example. They brought me in to work in conjunction with the architect. They had hired an architect who did a lot of the interior design, but they had basically blank walls. And so I kind of worked between the restaurant owner and the architect to do interior and exterior painting that helped elevate the atmosphere they were trying to achieve. So the whole vibe there is kind of like mid-century Southwest chic.
And it's so friendly too, like
very friendly.
The colors you chose, the almost like round shapes, it just lends itself to a fun, friendly place like you want to spend time in.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of vibe they were going for. And if you're familiar at all with the other La Buzz location, it has that, it's not mid-century chic. It's not as, I don't want to use the word manicured, but it's not as like intentionally styled as this new location, but it has that same friendly, approachable atmosphere. It's very eclectic. And so that's definitely the owner's personality. She's like very creative and fun and friendly, and people know her for that. And so even though this new location was like more designed and more intentional, the artwork that I did still carried through that like sense of personality. So there's lots of blank spaces that we just added little touches here and there to kind of create that subtle vibe.
You can definitely tell, and it looks awesome. And so what you're kind of what you're alluding to too is now you're not just painting what someone asked you to paint, but you're a conceptual artist also, and you're helping solve, your clients' problems and taking their idea, but really creating something new for them.
Absolutely.
And it's like, what makes a really good client for you?
The best client for me is someone who has a vision and trusts me to help carry that out. So a lot of restaurant owners, most of my clients are restaurants. I do work for other businesses also, but for example, a restaurant owner, they know what kind of food they want to serve. They know kind of who their typical customer is. So like, for example, they know the price point that they're going to shoot for. And most often they have like a strong idea of the product that they're going to offer, but they may not have a strong idea of what that should look like visually, like in the space. So someone who's willing to invest in like visual branding, both, all about this,
Yes.
more from the graphic design aspect, but I love a client who's invested in having a really nice logo and brand package done. And that gives me a great jumping off point, because I don't typically design logos or like start at that space. I really like to take that kind of brand identity that's already been established and figure out creative ways I can implement that and expand that in the space. I'm trying to think of, I'm actually like, I have a terrible memory for stuff, but I'm looking on my website to see if I can kind of come up with an example of that.
And what we'll do too is at the end too, we'll share like links when we post these online too of like your website and your portfolio, which is so fun. And it's a portfolio is such a big part of being a visual artist. And I know, for example, myself, I always feel like I haven't updated it, and like all of a sudden it's like 3 years later, I'm like, oh my God, I haven't.
Yeah, I know. I'm terrible at that part of it.
New.
So like a good example would be 1055, their downtown location. So they had, Ryan from Saywell's Design does all their branding, and I love working with him. He's one of my favorite people to collaborate with, because he always is like very intellectual in his design process, and he really thinks a lot about the company and the aesthetic they're going for. And so I love taking his logos and design work and then expanding it in the space. So he did some really great work for 1055, and I was able to take elements of the designs he had done for them. Like he has this certain style of a hop that's illustrated in the logo. And so I took that and incorporated it like in the signage. And then the building itself is a historic building. And so all the artwork I did for them in that space kind of fits that same, like it looks as if it's been there for a long time, and it looks as if it fits the space. So it's not necessarily like using the exact same font as, is in the logo, although I do use that, but it all works together cohesively.
I 100% agree. We love 1055, and
love those guys.
Yeah, they're quite often, and in general. So I know what you're talking about. So the mural kind of near the
oh yeah, where they actually brew the beer.
Yeah, where they brew the beer.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's called. That's awesome. But that beautiful mural you did over there is just so nice. And then the other signage around, and I can see why you and Ryan make a great pair. He's such a great graphic designer, and you're so good at translating these things and bringing it up to another level, in interiors and exteriors. I've seen you do stuff on both parts. But
so that's a great example, actually. That big mural that's behind the brewery area. In the center of that mural is the actual logo that Ryan designed. And then they wanted to create a more elaborate version of it. And so I took those kind of hop vine elements from the logo. I think it was from a different version of the logo, and just kind of extended those and repeated them in different ways around it. And then took the colors from the logo and expanded on those. So it has a more decorative German feel to it.
It 100% feels, more German, a little more ornate, and it adds just like beauty into this space back there that you would never even think of, like maybe adding something, but it adds so much over there.
Yeah, and it was really, that's probably one of the toughest jobs I've ever done, actually.
Why? Okay, tell me why. Yeah.
Oh, just because of the accessibility to the wall. Like, it's very high up, and the angle, I couldn't like fit a ladder at the right angle in all parts of the space. So there were definitely some risky positions that I had to put myself in and just like, say a little prayer before I climbed up the ladder. And that's also like century-old brick. So
does it crumble, or what's that like?
Yeah, as I was painting, big chunks would just kind of fall out onto me. And brick is tricky to paint on because of how absorbent it is. So also just like laying the design out, like sometimes if I can, I'll use a projector. Sometimes I'll use a pattern, like a printed pattern, and then do kind of a transfer. But I definitely couldn't use a projector for this one just because of how high it is and the angle. And then I also like couldn't really pin a pattern to the wall either because of how fragile the brick was. So I kind of just had to go a little bit at a time, and like, it probably took me 3 times as long as any other basic job just because of how slow and steady and how many times I had to, that pattern just fell down. So I'm going to climb down, pick it up, and repin it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's
so
the things
it was,
that people don't think about.
Yeah. So I'm glad you like that, because when I look at it, I just see like, whoo, that almost didn't happen. That was such a tricky piece.
You're like, that's a lot. What's another maybe really challenging project that you've had, or what can be challenging, I guess, doing this kind of work?
Well, certain surfaces are always challenging. So like that brick, for example, was tough in the sense that it just was very fragile and uneven, but stucco is probably the hardest thing to paint on because of how textured it is. So if I'm in a place where I can't project an image and kind of draw it, it's really hard to like get a pattern to be flat. Like it doesn't want to stick. And then
it's probably harder to even do clean lines, like if it's so bumpy. Like
so depending on how rough it is, I have to totally change. Depending on the surface, I change the brush that I use, and I change the stroke method that I use. And so for stucco, a lot of it can just be like sponging. Sponging, rather like typically you'd really want to just do like a smooth continuous stroke, but you can't do that. So you have to kind of sponge. And then corrugated metal is another really tricky surface because obviously because of the, so it's where the metal will be flat and then it'll come in an angle and then be flat again and come back out and be flat again. So it's not just like having to paint at all those different angles, but when you're putting an image up there, it gets visually distorted. And so I have to basically choose one of the surfaces to be my reference surface and then visually correct to where it looks like aligned to the eye. But it can't be drawn as a straight line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's trippy. It's like kind of like optical illusion. Like you're having to compensate for the strangeness, trying to make it visually look like it's still. Like,
exactly.
Wow, I've never thought about that.
So like on my website, the cereal grillers piece that I did a few months ago is on corrugated metal.
Oh.
And that's
what location's that? Where's that one?
It's at their new Speedway location.
Oh, okay.
The one that it used to be Lotus Garden.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
I have to check it out. That's cool. So, who inspires you? Do you have any mentors or anyone that you kind of look up to also, like in this line of work or otherwise?
Yeah, I don't really have any like close mentors that I talk to regularly, but I have been lucky enough to take some workshops with some professionals in the field. So the first sign painting workshop I ever did was with Mike Meyer, and he is just look up a picture of him and you'll immediately understand what
Okay.
a fun guy he is.
Okay.
He's got this awesome mustache.
Oh.
But he's just one of the nicest, friendliest, funniest guys you'll ever meet. And he teaches these workshops all around the world for this organization called Better Letters. And their whole goal is to continue the art of sign painting because I'm sure you know, like, that used to be how all signs were made, was through hand painting. And then as computers and digitization came in, a lot of that, you know, went to vinyl and printing. And so there's kind of this like generation gap between sign painters where this new wave of like appreciating things that are hand done and handmade is like coming back. So there's a whole big group of us now who are like so excited to learn traditional techniques and do things by hand. So he's awesome.
That's cool.
And his work is very expressive, very colorful and expressive. And I liked working with him because he has this whole kind of philosophy of like practice and know the right techniques and know the right ways, but don't spend so much time like trying to make everything look so perfect, because that's really not the purpose of it. Like, as long as you know the rules of like composition and hierarchy and like what actually is going to be an effective sign, like having something be so perfectly 100% straight is not the best use of your time, and definitely not a way to make money.
Yeah.
So,
But also, like, so if you're getting like the emotion or whatever the point of it across, that's more important.
Or like there's all kinds of rules, like how much information you want to include on a sign. It can't be too busy, right? So less is more. Like, choose where you're going to direct people's attention, especially if it's like a big road sign or something, right? You only have like this fast to capture their attention. So what are you going to make bigger, and what color contrast are you going to use? There's all these kind of rules that matter, but once you kind of get that down, then, you know, the little perfectionism stuff doesn't really matter all that much.
That's always a hard part for artists and creatives is hearing about a job, but then trying to put together, well, how long do I think this is really going to take me?
Oh, yeah. Estimating time is still just really tricky to do, especially because the types of jobs that I'm doing always change, and like I hardly ever do the same thing twice. So every job is so different that it can be hard to estimate hours. So typically I don't solely charge hourly. Like, if I did that, it would be good. Yeah. But I feel like I've gotten really comfortable with knowing like an approach technically to a job, as far as what paint to use and what brushes to use and what I'll need to lay out the image and make sure it lasts a long time. And
yeah, that's true. We have some pretty harsh like environment here in Tucson. What if it's outside? Or, special paint and probably UV. Is it like UV? I don't know, sort of thing. Or
honestly, like for most exterior jobs, I just use house paint.
Yeah, because
because it's made to last in the elements.
Yeah.
So but there was a lot to learn as far as just like materials, and
I'm sure. What resources do you use? Like, do you ever listen to certain podcasts, or it sounds like you did that workshop? Is there any books that inspire you or continue to inspire you?
Yeah, so I've done 3 workshops, a sign painting workshop with Mike. I've done a sign painting and gilding workshop with Anne McDonald, who's out of New Zealand. She's an amazing gilder. So that's working with a gold leaf.
I remember photos from that. Awesome.
That was super fun. And then the other workshop I've done is with Noel Weber. I'll show you his book in a second, but he's an amazing, he does everything pretty much, but he really started with doing pencil drawings, lettering through pencil, and then that's always where he starts, and then that gets translated into a painted or fabricated sign, and a lot of times he has a gilded element involved too, working with gold leaf. So he actually has this whole big workshop with his son in Boise.
Oh.
And they'll take a project from like pencil sketch all the way to like fabricating something with foam or metal and then painting that and then gilding it. And I mean, it's just amazing the things that I saw come out of that workshop that just started with like a pencil sketch. So he's definitely someone that I look up to a whole lot.
And he's got a book too, you said?
Yeah, so he came out with this book, I'll show you, last year.
Oh, that's is that the cover?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So the whole book is like his sketches from different jobs.
Wow. Oh my gosh. It was like so good.
Oh, he's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. So some of these are like personal pieces. Some are for clients like Disney.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you obviously love typography.
Oh yeah.
And that book reminds me of my favorite professor is John Langdon, who's an amazing hand letterer, but also like, you know, creator of ambigrams. And it kind of blows you away what they can do. It's awesome.
It was really helpful for me to go to his workshop because there's such a trend of like doing everything on the computer.
Yeah.
And I know myself well enough to know that that's not my best medium. Like I have learned the software, but I find that I'm so much more creative if I start by hand and then use the computer as a tool to like either put that in the format that I need it to be in or like put it up on a wall or whatever. But if I start by hand, I always am happier with the final design. So just seeing his process and seeing him like stick with that through all these years was like very encouraging to me to just kind of like at least stick with that process at first.
I think that I feel the same way. And although I'm on the computer quite often, I think that's a good lesson for any up and coming like artists or designers is sometimes when you hop on the computer first, you have that block because if you don't know how to use all the software just yet, you're super limited. Mm-hmm. But if you at least come up with your concepts in your sketchbook first, then you can learn how you can Google or ask someone or take a class and learn how to, in the software, do what you want to do, but you're not limited. And it's almost like, I think with writing too, like brainstorming writing, it's a lot easier to do pencil to paper than just the computer. I'm so with you on not being on the computer when you're trying to come up with like ideas. What are you doing now? We're in a kind of weird, challenging time with, I guess, this pandemic. So how are things going for you? And do you have to do anything differently right now or?
Yeah, it's a strange time for everyone, for sure. For me, I do have my clients who were kind of already on my calendar are still letting me come in and finish, painting jobs for them that we had already kind of started. And I haven't, normally it's been a little strange because normally I get like an inquiry maybe like every other day or something like that. But it's been very quiet and I totally get it. I feel very protective of like my clients, so I'm, cause most of my business is from restaurants. So I'm just, hoping that they come through okay, for their own businesses. But as far as for what I'm doing, I'm working on a lot of design work, luckily, which is doable from home.
Yeah.
And then I actually, I got a grant from the Arizona, I can never remember, the Arizona Arts Foundation or Arizona Commission for the Arts or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was an opportunity grant and I was going to use it to go to the Typographics Festival in New York City at the Cooper Union in June. But now that conference has been postponed. So in the next couple of months, I'm going to be just taking a lot of online courses and just like using this time to focus on learning new, design techniques and just kind of playing around with my own work. So it's kind of exciting, even though I'm a little nervous.
That is exciting. I can tell you like learning though, the fact that not everyone goes out and does workshops. And I think you can tell that you're very self-motivated and want to learn new things. And have you found yet what kind of online resources there might be are you looking for design classes, or more like, have you found something yet? Are you still looking?
Yeah, so actually, Cooper Union has a series. They have a whole program for type.
Cool.
And every spring and every fall, they host a series of workshops. They bring in experts, everyone from like animated type designers to traditional sign painters. And they do just a series of workshops in one way or another having to do with type. So they've actually put the rest of their spring workshops they've put online. So there's classes like branding for restaurants.
Oh, that's so cool.
Or branding with type. So taking a product and finding the right font that kind of communicates the experience that you want the customer to have and that kind of thing. So I'm super excited to just nerd out on that kind of stuff.
That's
online.
Cool. They have put that all online.
It's awesome because like I wanted to go to these workshops, but they're, it's one weekend, but it's in New York. So the expense is, to fly out there and to get lodging and stuff. And so hopefully they'll continue to put, this conference festival was for 10 days in June, and hopefully they'll continue to put those events online if they can.
That's pretty awesome.
So yeah, those are probably the big ones. And then I'm also just going to look on Skillshare and some of those sites and just take some little mini courses and just play around with those.
Yeah, I've done a few. LinkedIn now, I think LinkedIn acquired Lynda.
Yeah, that's on my list too.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat. I've done a little bit more for as far as like the PR side of things, just because I'm doing a lot more of that for clients. And the LinkedIn Learn is pretty cool. It's pretty, they have, like, I like when the time isn't super long, so I can just get little snippets of information as I have time. And
yeah,
it's cool that we have, I guess, so many resources we can pull from.
Yeah, and I think like design organizations and arts organizations are wonderfly like putting a lot of content online for free. So like yesterday, AIGA OC did like a 2-hour web class with Dylan Mingus, who is one of my favorite designers from Columbus, Ohio. And he did this whole like 2-hour like kind of demo on Procreate.
Oh.
So, and I was like, I'm familiar with Procreate, but I don't know like all of the tricks, and I'm not like super savvy with it. So that was free, and it was 2 hours, and I was just like taking notes the whole time, like, oh my God, that would have saved me so much time. That's so great. Like, oh, that's such a cool effect. I can't wait to use that.
Oh, that's so cool that they did that. In general, with having your business here in Tucson, how do you think Tucson has been supportive of your business? And you can also talk about if there's some challenges also. Sure. Yeah.
Well, I think, like I said earlier, I was like, I'm so grateful to all of the restaurants that have just been like, I really thought that when I started reaching out to people, I was going to get a lot of no's, but I was just so surprised and happy that everyone, like almost everyone was like, yeah, that sounds cool. Like, come on in. I need a specials board, or yeah, like I hadn't even thought of that, because they're so focused on like the health department and getting the space ready and getting their menu ready that like often the visual aesthetics of the space is like the kind of the final thing.
Yeah.
And so, so 99% of my business is in Tucson, and people reach out to me, and so like the amount of interest is there, and Tucson's very supportive of local artists, as you know.
Yeah.
And so, I think in general, there's this atmosphere of like incorporating local artists in one way or another, whether that's through using someone like me to do something more functional, or like having a mural painted, or like even just displaying artwork in the restaurant. So in that way, Tucsonans are very, very supportive of what I do.
Wow. Awesome.
I would encourage Tucson business owners to maybe be a little more adventurous in the artwork that they can use. So like, or invest more in professional branding. So really recognizing the importance of like hiring a good designer for your logo and for other branding materials, like designing your menu, because it really has such a big impact if you work with someone who knows what they're doing. And I think it really adds to like the customer experience. So if you have something that looks polished and is interesting, and maybe it's colorful, or it's just like done really well artistically, like people recognize that. And if you work with someone like me who takes those elements and is creative with them in the space, like people come in and they appreciate that, and that makes them want to come back. Mm-hmm. So it's this way of like creating excitement, but also like customer loyalty, so that like, for example, if you have a friend visiting from out of town, like you'd be excited to take them there because it just looks cool, right?
Yep. So
being more adventurous and caring more about like design and art in general.
I think that's great. I think I back you up on that.
Yeah.
Obviously. But I think it's like the subliminal things that, you're part of creating this experience, and people might not think, I just love this wall over here and I love this menu. Like they're not going to think about it, but their overall experience is going to be really great. And like you said, it's creating that vibe of, I want to come back here. I like how I feel in here. Mm-hmm. And what you're doing is helping create that whole user experience of
exactly.
of what they're doing.
Yeah, a lot of it is subconscious, but it really elevates like the product too. It supports it makes your food taste better.
Yeah.
It makes you able to like charge what you need to charge. And don't get me wrong, like I totally empathize with. I mean, I think we're all learning more than ever like how difficult it is to run a restaurant because of people just don't realize like the amount of money that goes into it. And so I empathize that people are working with budgets and stuff, but my whole goal is to help businesses be more profitable by making their space like comfortable and visually pleasing, and like actually using the artwork to sell the product too. So it's kind of like a, invest here and like you'll get that return on investment.
That's 100% true. And you brought up a good point too, is working with professionals. So like a professional designer or you tend to ask the right questions in the beginning of the project, and make that experience kind of fun too. It doesn't have to be like a bad experience having to create some of this. It actually could be really fun, exciting, and there's a lot of questions and research, that goes into, and someone like you asks those at the beginning. Therefore, the process ends up with something like really awesome, probably even better than people expect.
Oh yeah, I love the intellectual aspect of the process for sure.
That's really cool. And what are any future plans that you have, like for your business, or even for like, or what would be an ideal vision like for Tucson?
For my business, I definitely want to keep going down the route of like overall commercial artwork consulting and like implementing a broader vision for the space. So not just the logo painting, but like kind of what I did at La Buzz in 1055, just creating like a visual atmosphere that fits the brand. So I definitely, I love that. I feel like that's really my niche right there. I want to keep kind of developing my own artistic voice and working on my own pieces that are just for me, or, not based on commission or something like that. But the other big thing that I really want to get more into is just doing more lettering murals in Tucson. We have so many amazing murals, but you may notice none of them are really lettering focused. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what I want to start doing more of, is doing murals that have words or phrases that are positive or fun, just so that when people drive by them, they get this like it puts a smile on their face, or they get, happy or something like that.
I love that. That's really cool. That's fun. How would that be kind of through some of these programs, like through like soccer or whoever, like to be able to do some of those murals? Like, is that through grants mostly?
It could come about a lot of different ways. It could
Yeah.
just be someone who owns a building and wants a mural on it, and then just lets me kind of, do like pitch a design idea.
Nice.
So it doesn't even have to be directly related to a business that's in that building, just that the building owner wants to take that blank wall and turn it into an opportunity.
And increase the value, I would say.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Hopefully. So it can be funded through that way. It could be like a community grant. So something that's funded by an arts organization. It could be something that's community funded. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of go about it.
Well, I think business owners that are listening to this should contact you.
Yes, I have lots of ideas actually.
It's sweet.
That are ready to go.
Let's make it happen. And with that being said, how should people connect with you?
The best way is just through Instagram. My Instagram account, Modern Aquarian.
Is that where people can see some of your work too, is on Instagram?
Yeah, so that's probably where I post. I mean, I think we were talking about earlier, I'm really terrible about updating things.
Yeah, it's hard.
By the time I finish a job, I'm just like, okay, click.
Yeah.
I really should have a professional photographer come in behind me and just take all that. But so my website, modernaquarian.com, is the more professional curated portfolio, but Instagram is where you can see really up-to-date work.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for taking time today and talking with me. And good luck with everything. And obviously we'll stay in touch.
Thanks again for having me.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening today. This was a delightful conversation with Ashley White. The key lessons that stand out include how much she loves to learn. From taking workshops to lessons online, she's learning about new techniques for on and off the computer. She also knows who her ideal client is. Over the past 6.5 years, Ashley has developed a good sense about what types of clients she likes to work with. You can tell from how she smiles when talking about some of her past projects. Not only did she enjoy the final product, but she liked the process because of the collaboration she had with those clients. Ashley said, "If I start by hand, I'm always happier with the final design." And I wholeheartedly agree with this sentiment and encourage anyone to brainstorm and conceptualize pencil to paper, then move into the digital realm. You'll probably be happier with the final design too. We appreciate you listening to the Old Pueblo New Economy podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please check out all of our episodes and series on www.oldpuebloneweconomy.com or opne.biz. While you're there, make sure you sign up for our newsletter to receive upcoming episodes as they air. If you have any suggestions for who we should interview next, make sure to send us an email. Thank you for listening and stay tuned for next week's episode.